Hello, I'm Leslie Andrews, Jones Lang LaSalle's Director of Category Management for Travel. I'm thrilled to be with you today as we discuss an important topic, the science of compliance. All of us, be it a buyer or a seller, we're looking for compliance, and there's a science to that. As we take a look at today's agenda, we're going to talk about why compliance. We're going to think about the behavioral science principles, specifically the IKEA effect and the peek-in rule. And then we'll talk about nudge theory. We have that integration of behavioral science and change management. And finally, the journey of compliant organizations. What can we all do in order to ensure that there's compliance? Why compliance? And it's pretty important. It drives business growth. It really lays the foundation on which buyers and sellers build an organization's reputation and add value to that organization. Standardization, it builds unity and it strengthens. And it has a direct impact of how you go to market and how you're perceived in the marketplace. Behavioral science itself is the study of why we make decisions. Why do we do what we do? It's that intersection between psychology and economics. In reference to the 5 behavioral science principles, Google's Miles Shankar gives us a nice synopsis, what we're going to take and apply for the travel industry. As we take a look at those behavioral sciences, it's principle number 1, which is social identity priming. We want to appeal to a person's positive and aspirational identity. Ones want to be compliant. They just need to know how, and they need encouragement to do so. Then there's user agency and control. We want that user engagement, better known as the IKEA effect, where business decisions are impacted by engagement. It's where we directly use that user engagement at the onset of a project or a process or a policy design. And then throughout that design, we're consistently listening and building that design to our users to ensure that we have the great positive outcome. In our case, it's compliant behavior. As Shankar continues on with behavioral sciences, she talks about this operational transparency. It's simply sharing why we've chosen the suppliers that we've chosen. What are the benefits organizationally, and what are the personal benefits of being compliant? We want to establish trust in our relationship. And from there, we want memories. In reference to memories, we're going to use the peek-in rule, and that's that psychological approach of which people judge and experience based on how they felt throughout the experience. So we want to build some peaks of experiences, those positive, memorable experiences, and we want to culminate our project or process with an end experience that's going to be memorable. So memories, that peek-in rule really does apply. When it comes to messenger and messaging, we want to be sure that we have stakeholder endorsement. So the stakeholders, they tell you in public that they're going to endorse your project or your process or your update, and they actually inform the organization. And there's that public endorsement that this project is moving forward. So stakeholder endorsement is quite key. Now that we've gone through those principles, we can actually move on to another behavioral science, which is called nudge theory. Nudge theory is Peter or Richard Thalen, and he is given a Nobel Prize in 2017 in economics based on his theory. So it's a theory in which behavioral economics and political theory, where the users are actually nudged along to do what's best for the firm. It's where you're listening to feedback and designing still that process and nudging folks to do what's best. Instead of going from 60%, let's say, compliant to 100%, you nudge folks along the way. Maybe the first goal is 65 or 70 or 75%, and eventually you'll get to your end goal by deploying nudge theory. If we put this all together, We're using behavioral science and a little bit of change management in corporate travel to have that positive outcome. So first off, we have to do this environmental scan. We really want to take a look at the different travel personas, the personas of your travelers, the personas of your clients, and understand what the key performance indicators should be. And that's part of that design process after your discovery. And then we want to go ahead and encourage them to continue and move forward. So from the beginning, it's all about that environmental scan. It's defining that traveler and buyer persona, outlining those desired behaviors, establishing your key performance indicators. We have this value of compliance, understanding what that means in your organization. And then from there, we have cultural alignment, policy and process alignment. And then we have stakeholder engagement, determining what the stakeholders truly need in order for a successful change management or successful project. We have user engagement on the front end. We want to establish some BHAGs, some big, huge, audacious goals, and the small wins along the way. You want to create that journey with that peak in rule effect. We have stakeholder endorsement, communication plan, not only in written form, but maybe it's the video age. So you do videos, you write about what to expect, and perhaps you do an old-fashioned newsletter. But whatever works in your organization, that's what you want to do in your communication plan to communicate this change in process or create the understanding. You want to deploy nudge theory as we kind of nudge folks along to be more compliant. Then we want to create the right memories. We want to celebrate the wins, the big ones and the small ones, with that peak in rule. So you're creating those positive memories of being compliant. What does it feel like? You want to over communicate, ensure that you're communicating the best way in which your organization learns. You want to realize the value of compliance. And this is where we start to deploy some change management. We have some engagement, we have some actualization reinforcement, and this is how we continually influence users, our end users, in our realize the value of compliance. We have continued engagement, and we have self-actualization, and we have that reinforcement. And after all of that is concluded, we continue once more at the first step with our environmental scan. Perhaps just simply doing a survey, validating the progress that you've made, and you continue on the process as you deploy more nudge theory in order to receive that compliant behavior. In short, the journey to compliance doesn't have to be complicated, and we can move beyond stick and carrots. What we can do is do the environmental scan. Perhaps it's just a survey, and come to know the persona of your travelers or of your client base. And from there, we're using behavioral science. We're doing the IKEA effect that Dan Morchin and Mike Norton built. We're using peak in rule that 4 PhDs built. And then we're deploying nudge theory, which Richard Thalen has built and actually won a Nobel Prize for. We use these behavioral principles, these behavioral science principles, in order to drive compliant behavior. We continue to deploy change management. And then with all of that completed or consistently done, then we'll have the opportunity to definitely have more compliance. We'll see favorable contract performance, and we'll see savings. It's really up to all of us to try something new, something that's scalable, borrowing from another discipline in order to move compliance, no matter if you're a buyer or a seller. It's up to us. Let's do something different.